Hi, I'm James. So, you want to use Illustrator to make a laser cuttable and or engravable file. That's great. First thing we need to talk about is the difference between cutting and engraving. Those are the two basic functions of our laser cutter and engraver. A cut, the laser follows the contours of your vector, and an engrave fills in within your enclosed vector. Um, and the differences look a little bit like this. You've got your cuts where it just follows along and burns a hole in it, and then this is a raster um, where it basically goes across and it burns in all of that. Why is this important to know? Well, they behave slightly differently, so you need to design with your intent in mind. If you're trying to make a engraving, your vectors need to be closed. If it's not enclosed, then all it sees is an infinitely thin line and it doesn't bother trying to engrave it. Whereas a cut, it just follows that path, and so you could have an open path. So let's take a look at a standard file that you might make. So you have text, which is relatively common, or you have basic shapes, which is relatively common. Right now, this is not a file that our laser cutter could deal with, or would not deal with the way you wanted. In the case of the text, if I hit Command Y, it shows us all of our vectors, and the text doesn't have vectors associated with it. That will be completely transparent to the laser cutting software and thus won't show up. And in the case of our shape here, if you were expecting it, that was Command Y again, it to cut this outline, it will instead cut this outline, and you'll end up with a jigsaw puzzle instead of your intended form. If you wanted to engrave this, what you would get, instead of this nice, where it engraves all of this, it will actually give you something that looks like this. Because all of those little pieces that you see here, it pays attention to. And when you're engraving, it starts from the outside and works its way in. So if it sees this line, it will start to engrave within this path, and then it gets inside this here and it says, oh, I don't want to engrave that. And so it repeats that, and then you wind up with this sort of checkerboard looking thing. So how do we solve these two problems? Well, in the case of the text, there is a tool. We select that. Under Type, there should be Create Outlines. Now, once you do this, you won't be able to edit it anymore. So it's a good idea to save your originals before you convert, or do a save as after you make your conversions, so that if you discover a typo or something, you don't have to totally do everything over again. Because once you create outlines, you're stuck with the vectors. But now, all of this has been vectorized. All of these little anchor points are telling you that that's what's happening. If I hit Command Y again, now you see the outline. It will now follow that path on a cut, or it will fill in each of these with an engraving. Okay. So that takes care of your text. What about this mess here? Well, there is a tool called the Pathfinder. If you do not have a window that has the Pathfinder tab on it, under Window, you can go to Pathfinder. That will open this up here. And now you have different shape modes. And basically, if what you're looking for is the outline of your shape, what you're going to want to do is select it all. Notice I'm going to deselect that. Select all that you want to join together, and we're going to, I believe it's called merge on this one, or I believe you could also use unite, but either I believe works in this case. So we're going to hit merge, and now when I hit Command Y, you don't have any of that interior shape. So the laser will follow this. The machine is not very smart. So if you don't give it very specific instructions, it will give you a mess. Check your outlines with Command Y. Make sure that your text is outlined and not still text. This will not work. This will work just fine. And then this right here is a, will engrave completely solid like you saw here, like you might have been expecting, and it will also be able to cut the outlines. Now when you send me your file, you're going to need to let me know what you want engraved and what you want cut, because that software is beyond the scope of this particular demonstration, and if you're doing remote submissions for laser cutting and engraving, you'll need to let me know on that. So the next step that you're going to need to do is the software has some compatibility issues with the modern Illustrator files. So when you save this, you're going to want to save as, and we're going to title it text, because that's what it is, and format Adobe Illustrator. We will save that, and this menu that you normally ignore, do not ignore it. We are going to click on the version up here where it says Illustrator 2020, and we're going to go all the way down to Illustrator 8. And now it will throw away all the stuff that confuses the laser cutter, and make it so that the machine can read it. Something else to pay attention to: you do not want any ruler guides or other things like that in there as well. Those will show up as lines. So make sure that's all of your guides and everything are turned off before you save it as your Illustrator 8 file. So just to recap, Command Y is your friend. Make sure that your outline is clean. Wherever there's a line, it's going to cut, or if there's overlapping lines, it will attempt to engrave or not engrave, depending on how it thinks it's nested. It engraves from the outside in. So if you actually want this area inside your shape to not be engraved, you will need to enclose that in another box so that it then engraves inside the box and then not inside your shape. And outline your text, Pathfinder and merge, save as Illustrator 8. All right, thank you very much.